I was always fascinated with three-dimensional sight. You know how that works. Each eye sees the world from a slightly different angle, and what we end up experiencing is not two pictures but one enhanced picture, as our brain actually uses the difference between the two angles to create an illusion of depth. In almost the same way, even though we may feel that we're perceiving the world through this single brain, a single point of view if you will, this is an illusion. In reality, our personal perception is actually the combined perceptions of our two separate brains, the right brain and the left brain. This is a physical thing, two actual lumps of gray matter that live side by side in our head, talking to each other through a kind of communication bridge. As I already mentioned in the previous section, each of these two separate brains has a completely different way of understanding things. The left brain uses logic, while the right brain uses intuition. But if capture is the elegant form of communicating our personal interpretation of something, which it is, then the fact that we actually have two parallel interpretation systems, so to speak, and that our audience also has the same two interpretation systems, then this fact is extremely relevant to us as creatives. You see, your left brain and your right brain are literally your two most important creativity tools, and it makes a whole lot of sense to know exactly what they can do for you, what they can't do, and when to use each one. Let's start with the left brain. Your left brain is really good at detecting structure. It means it's good at taking a subject apart, see what parts it's made of and how they relate to each other, and then put the whole thing together again. In this very simple example, my left brain perceived the main body of this pear as a kind of a cone mounted on a ball. It also analyzed the tonality as three different colors: the main color, the shade, and the highlight. I call the left brain captures dry captures, because they keep an emotional distance from the subject. I mean, if you look at that pear, isn't it a kind of a detached way of describing it? You get these kind of dry captures when you ask yourself, well, how do I understand this? What is it made of? And you'll see this kind of thinking in every good book that teaches any kind of art form, not just visual arts. Take writing, for example. Any decent writing book will teach you about writing an outline, which you know is the bulleted list of the main headlines that you're going to write about, right? And what you're essentially doing is you're dividing your text to different parts. You're asking yourself, well, what is my subject made of? How do I break it down to simpler parts? And then I can write each part separately. And that is clearly a left brain sort of thinking. So what's good about dry captures? Well, first of all, it gives you a sense of control. Dry captures are a cool, calm, and collected way of describing something. You get to spend much less time trying and failing and experimenting and erasing and doing stuff all over again and that sort of thing. Actually, a friend of mine, a very experienced animator, is a really left-brain kind of guy. And he's just phenomenal at doing these no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point dry sketches. He would be sitting there just lightly marking his left-brain plans and ideas, drawing hundreds and hundreds of sketches, sometimes without throwing out a single sheet of paper in like days or weeks. And I was sitting there, and I'm more of a right brain kind of animator, and I was just sitting there in piles and piles and piles of discarded paper, scribbling options like crazy and then throwing them out again and all that. And I was looking at him working, and I was like really wishing I could do this in this cool, calm, and collected left brain kind of way. Also, dry captures are a lot more reliable. They're accurate, they're measurable, almost I would say scientific. You can do them over and over and over again exactly the same way, exactly the same speed, exactly the same style. It just makes it easier to plan your schedules as well, especially since everything is kind of broken down to smaller parts already, because that's the way the left brain works, and together with this steadiness it makes it really plannable. One of the strongest features of dry capturing is the solid structure it adds to the work. And you should know that audiences love structure. Think about this course, for example. Imagine the exact same course, but it's just one long string of words recited by a computer voice. It would have been really challenging to get anything out of such a course, even though technically the information is still all there in the same way, but structure and clarity are really good friends, and it's not often you get one without the other. And if you have a weakly defined structure, usually you also don't have clarity. Another advantage, because dry thinking is logical, it's much easier to explain it to students, which means two things. First, that dry thinking will pave your way to a teaching career, so if you're interested in that, dry capturing is a really good idea. Second, it means that dry captures make it easier to compare your work to existing models. For example, as a screenwriter, you'll be able to write your story outline, which is, as we said before, a dry capture, according to a structure theory that you might have read in a screenwriting guide. This kind of thing is virtually impossible to do with right brain captures, as we shall see in a moment. But perhaps the most impressive advantage of dry captures is that they're easy to edit. Take this drawing for example. Because of the structural nature of the dry sketch, I can easily move the different elements around, delete stuff, modify stuff, change relationships between body parts and so on. I can do this in a way that a wet capture like this, for example, wouldn't have allowed at all. When capturing this course, to take this example as well, bulleted lists made it possible for me to quickly try out different ways of explaining my ideas to you. Alright, so let's sum up. Left brain thinking produces dry captures. They are easy to edit, teachable and learnable, reliable, controlled, they make it easier to plan your work, and they also have this nice clarity that comes from a strong structure. Let's now turn to the right brain and see what that part of our perception has to offer. Your right brain is the exact opposite of your left brain. It doesn't take things apart, but rather perceives them as the whole. In the previous section we called it holistic thinking. It uses emotions. Ask yourself, how do I feel about this? And you'll be activating your right brain. The right brain also considers things in light of your past experiences. What does this remind me of is also a really good right brain activation button. To get a right brain capture of the same peer we saw before, I asked myself those two questions. How do I feel about it? And what does it remind me of? The answers I personally came up with, and of course capture is a personal thing, as I'm sure you remember, so my answers are just mine. In this case I thought, well, it's kind of full and curvy and it reminds me of a pregnant woman. And then I captured that. And of course the result is nothing like the controlled analysis of the left brain. Instead you get this capture that describes the peer as a whole and not as the sum of its parts. And it's messy and sticky and juicy, which is why I call right brain captures wet captures. Wet captures are everything dry captures are not. They're exciting, they're emotional, they're involved, they're passionate. In many ways, they're what art is all about. And even when they're not perfect, people connect to them. They don't just get it, they enjoy it. They laugh, or they say, "Oh, that's so cute," or they connect with the story that the capture is telling. There's none of that connection in dry captures, because dry captures are, well, dry. Also, their holistic nature creates a coherent sort of flow, which is unbroken by sections and chapters and dividers and, logic. Things just move naturally from one area to the next, and it has a lot of charm and this quality of a living thing. In classic animation, there's the perfect example. One capture method, called straight ahead, is when you start by sketching the first frame, and then you place a new paper over it, and you sketch the next frame, and then the next one, and then so on. And you really get to use just your pure right brain intuition to guide you through the action, to tell you what the next frame is going to be. And then there's the other kind of a capture, which is a left brain type called pose to pose, where you draw the main poses first, just like headlines in a written outline. And then when you have these key poses, you go in and you fill in the rest of the drawings. And I think you can clearly see here the difference between the two approaches. See how the wet sketch, the straight ahead approach, gives you that really charming and natural flow, which is completely missing in the dry pose to pose result. Because when a wet capture works, when you achieve this elusive flow that I'm talking about, it has this quality of being somehow wholesome. You just don't want to touch it because anything you change is probably going to ruin it. Wet captures are also where surprises and happy accidents happen. You never know what's going to come out. It can turn out a huge miserable mess, or it can be the most beautiful thing you've ever made. And you'll be looking at it sort of thinking, did I really do that? Wet sketches are creative, in the sense that they create something that wasn't there before. New associations, analogies, unexpected connections. And most importantly, because it has so much to do with how you personally feel about the thing, what it reminds you personally of, it just adds something of you into the mix. You as a person with your own special, unique story. It's not about what you know, it's about who you are and what you've been through in life. And that's powerful stuff. So let's sum up again. Right brain thinking produces wet captures. They are exciting, surprising, they're creative, personal and unique, and they have this charming natural flow that is just impossible to understand or imitate or reproduce.
This was a fairly theoretical episode, more theoretical than almost all of the series, I think. As an exercise, I wanted to give you this quiz thing, which is a new thing. We haven't done that before, so that's exciting. When you click on the link in the description, you will get to this page in which you enter your email. It says here, I'm asking for your email and other details for context, and so that I can get back to you. No other emails will be sent unless you actively ask to get them, which is true. I stand behind that. So here we'll say the workflowbook.com/gmail.com, let's say, right? And then my name is this, and animation, let's say, for now. And then would you like to get an email when a new video is published? And I'll say yes. These are good emails. It's a good mailing list. It's worth it. So those are required answers. You'll have to put them in order to get to the next section. And here you'll get the actual quiz. And I'm just going to scroll by. You have some right or wrong, dry or wet examples. This section is one that I really like, because it says the questions below have not been answered in episode 6. Take a moment to think about them to see if you can figure these out for yourself. And most of the answers will be given in episode 7. So there are questions here like, only wet captures are actually creative because the right brain is the creative part of our brain. So is that correct or is that wrong? I'm not going to tell you. It's up to you. But yeah, these are a little bit more thought-provoking, and maybe we can have a discussion about some of these. So I hope you like the quiz idea. I hope you'll enjoy answering the questions. One other thing I wanted to mention is, if you do say yes to the email listing, then you're going to be added to the emailing list, and that's going to happen manually. So it's going to take some time, but as soon as we add you, you will get the link to this page, the working from home resource page. So unless you're already on the list, you should get this, and it has some really good information about how to work from home. It's a collection of resources from the book, from other things, some links to this is a link to an Excel sheet, or exactly a Google spreadsheet link with some planning template and some other stuff here that you can use. So check it out.
And that's it for this video. As usual, if you like what's happening here, like and subscribe, share it with people that you think that might, get something from this, and I will see you in the next video.